Hello and welcome back to American Truck Simulator. I'm davidinark, and today we're going to start things off from Denver, looking here at this really cool roadside cinematic view from the Denver International Airport. And I thought it might be kind of fun to grab a super heavy-duty load and take it from Denver all the way across the state to Grand Junction, Colorado. Some of you may know I used to live in Colorado a long time ago, and where even though this is leaving from the Denver area, technically we're actually closer to Aurora, Colorado at this point, heading, well, not at this point, but this point, we are heading out from just by the airport there. You can see it off in the distance, but had to head by Aurora, which I used to actually live in Aurora many moons ago. But you can see here we've got this giant tank. We've got an articulated trailer situation here. And what's really cool about these super heavy loads is that we get escorts. So you can see the police vehicle in front of me, and then there's also a trailing vehicle behind me. Now, I've not done one of these before, so this could get a little interesting, especially with the articulated trailer and my driving in general. This could definitely be a show. Now, one of the other cool things about having a wide load like this, or an oversized load, is that the escort will allow you to bypass any of the traffic signals. You get the right of way because you are in, this truck that is hauling this giant load. So, one thing before we get too far into this, I've been fighting some kind of a cold, or I don't know if it's because of the weird weather that we've had here, but I've got, so I may sound a little stuffy. I may have to clear my throat. So just bear with me. I'll try not to do that straight into your ear holes. So, all right. So we are heading out of the Denver International Airport. And I love how the little barrier things there, the decoration, is actually changing colors. That's very cool. Oh, that is so cool. Wow. What a neat detail. Kudos to the folks at STS for including something like that in the game. So cool. All right, so again, we are going to be driving toward Grand Junction. And I thought it might be kind of fun as we drive across the way to talk about, since we're doing a heavy-duty job here, what are some of the jobs that I've had just through my life, in my career in general, and honestly, how did I even get to my career? So, I don't know. I thought it might be kind of fun to think back, reminisce, and talk about the jobs that I've had. Now, for those of you that may not know, well, I just had a birthday the other day. April 20th was my birthday, so I appreciate everybody who shouted out birthday wishes. Thank you so much. And I am definitely Gen Xer. 42069, sex, drugs, rock and roll. So anyhow, one of my very first jobs, I was in high school. In fact, it was in Aurora. At the time, my family I was originally born in Pittsburgh, and my dad worked for the government, and we moved to Colorado for his job. Excuse me. And so we were living out there. I ultimately went to high school in Aurora. I went to Rangeview. And one of the first jobs I had was I worked at the Target that was there. And I worked in toys and seasonal. So essentially what that means is that I got to arrange board games, stuffed animals, and put things like, push mowers together and all the other mess, man. So we switched lanes here. And the way this works is the trailing vehicle actually switched lanes first. Then the lead vehicle switched lanes, and then I switched lanes in between them. So I don't know how often that's going to happen in this, but that's very cool. Now this tells me we're going to change lanes again, but I don't see how. All right. Well, anyway, we're going to keep heading west on I-70. One of the really cool things about this is that eventually, and part of the reason why I picked this, I've not been in the game down this road. Of course, I've been in real life many, many times, but we'll be heading down 70, which will take us through the Eisenhower Tunnel, which is so cool, and then past. Now I don't know what's going to be in the game, but there's Vale, there's Aspen, so you got the ski resorts. Now I also am not sure what time we'll be passing through, so if it's nighttime we probably won't see anything. But anyhow, we're going to kind of cruise along here. I also did not realize that the fastest we could go was about 40 miles an hour because we're hauling this thing, and that's not a limit that I'm putting on it. You can see in the lower right hand corner the little white square with the 40 in it. That's the maximum speed I am allowed to go according to the law. This is going to be a long trip. Well, that's okay. We got plenty to talk about. So, as I mentioned before, worked at Target when I was a teenager. I think I first started there when I was a junior in high school. That sounds about right. And at the time, in addition to rearranging stuffed animals and putting lawnmowers together, while I was working there, not far from where Target was located, they were getting a new store in place. And I can remember my manager talking about this because he said they're putting in a Walmart down the road. And of course I had no idea. We had no idea what Walmart was where I was located. And in those days, I'm sure in certain sectors, Walmart was everywhere, but certainly not in Aurora, Colorado. And so I was like, well, what's a Walmart? And my manager was like, well, it's kind of in between a Target and a Kmart in the retail scale, but I don't think they're going to last very long. They're kind of a 5 and dime shop. Well, boy, was he wrong. I would love to know. I would love to know whatever happened to that guy. I wonder if he stayed with Target for his whole career or if he ended up being a Walmart employee. I have no idea or whatever happened to him. But anyhow, so that pretty much finished out my senior year, and then went to college. And the college that I went to was a very small liberal arts college. In fact, it was so small that the administration treated it as if it were a large college and basically monetarily ran it into the ground, and it shut down after the first year that I was there. So, yikes. But when they shut down, I stayed there on campus, and in order to have some room and board, I worked for their food service department. So I worked the breakfast and lunch shift, and so I would get up and go in there and make breakfast for students who were still there. There weren't too many students left, but the facility itself in the summer was home to a variety of different folks who would come in for different activities. So they had the college itself. It was called Loretto Heights. Gorgeous old sandstone building and wood floors, and I just, by far and away, one of my favorite places ever to be ever. I mean, it's just such a phenomenal school. And so I can remember, I don't remember why they were there, but they were having some kind of a convention or something, and so there were a lot of adults there, meaning much older than college students, and so I'd serve them breakfast and lunch and what have you, and then hang out in the afternoons. And I was dating a girl there at the time, and so we would hang out, go dancing, clubbing, all that kind of stuff. And I eventually left there and transferred to University of Colorado, and had a great time at the University of Colorado. Unfortunately, that did not translate into grades. So just going to throw this out there as a little word of caution to all you folks who are either in college or heading to college or thinking about college. Have a good time, but don't have too good of a time. You may get a letter that recommends you take some time off to consider your collegiate career options. So I took some time off with the encouragement of the University of Colorado admissions team. And so I eventually went to work for a computer company. They were a retail / wholesale outlet. They had 2 locations. One was actually in a mall in Northern Virginia. And then they had another location that was in further Northern Virginia. One was in technically Dale City / Woodbridge. The other one was in Alexandria. Alexandria is more north. Alexandria is basically right outside of D.C. So I was working for that company, and here we go. In the game right now, this is the Eisenhower Tunnel. So we have climbed our way up the Rocky Mountains, and we are cutting through the Rockies right here in the Eisenhower Tunnel. This is, oh my gosh, this is truly one of the coolest experiences when you're driving across. Now, I can say that because I've only been in a passenger vehicle. I can't imagine what this is like in a real truck, especially because, the game has to compress distance. So getting from where we were in Denver to the Eisenhower Tunnel took way less time than it does in real life. And one of the other aspects that is kind of lost in here is the actual degree of incline that you take in order to get up to the tunnel and then down the other side. And especially coming back toward Denver, it's very deceptive. Your vehicle and your mind don't really grasp what's happening, how much you are climbing. Where you notice it, though, is as your vehicle is driving up, your RPMs, your vehicles, in fact, they recommend that you stay in, the low gears of your vehicle in order for it to pull up the hill, because otherwise your car is screaming the entire time coming up such a steep incline. And I'm sure there'll be signs here before too long that talk about how steep the grade is. In fact, there may have already been some signs that I missed while I was talking and not necessarily paying attention. But it's a pretty steep grade. As a matter of fact, there was a sign just a second ago that talked about the truck runaway ramps, and that's a real thing. They actually have these, and they are in case your truck loses its brakes and or you lose control of your vehicle. Then they have these places that are off the side of the road that are deep sand pits, and you never ever want to drive up into one of these unless it is an absolute emergency, because you will get buried in there. As a matter of fact, it's straight ahead of us right there. You can see it on the left. Now, as we come around, it'll end up being on the right. And you see how it's positioned. It's positioned right as you would take that curve that's going around, because the idea is that if you were out of control, you don't want to have to be fighting steering while you're out of control. And so here you would just run straight ahead and up into that sand. And I can't imagine what towing a vehicle out of that would entail. I mean, because you really do get buried up up to your, if I'm not mistaken, most trucks, of course, it depends on what you're carrying too, but you'll get buried at least halfway up your wheels, if not further than that. So definitely some scary stuff. Speaking of scary stuff, as you can see here, we are sort of coasting down the hill, and I'm going a little faster, actually a lot faster than I should be. As you can see, I'm going 40, come on, 43. I'm trying to slow down here, 42, but I'm only supposed to be going 40, so we'll play around with that as we go. Excuse me. But anyhow, getting back, so I was working for this computer company, and that I enjoyed that a lot. There were 3 or 4 guys that worked there, and this was very late 80s, very early 90s. Well, in fact, it wasn't even the 90s yet, because this would have been like 88, late 88 into 89. And it was just, it was such a cool time to be in computing, because you had PCs were, at that time, we were talking 386 was kind of the big deal, or that was the mainstream. 486s were hitting the market. At the same time, of course, you still had your Commodore 64. You still had your some of your Atari computers. You had the Commodore Amiga, which was screaming onto the scene, blowing everybody away. You had things like the Atari GS. It was just such a cool time to be in computing, and so I did that for a while, and then once I decided that I wanted to go back to college, I left there, and that's how I ended up davidinark. That's how I ended up in Arkansas, and so came out here to go to college, and while in college held several jobs at the same time. I do want to back up. When I was at Loretto Heights, I forgot about this. I was actually a lab worker for the computer lab that they had 2 IBM XTs, which we played Wizardry on, and then they also had some Apple IIe's or C's. I can't remember which ones now. And I actually wrote my very first, I guess you want to call it a novella. It wasn't quite long enough to be a novel, but a little longer than a short story. And I wrote it on one of those Apple computers, and I don't know, it was awful. It was so bad. It was what you would expect a freshman in college to write if they were writing a novel, and was of average writing ability at that time. So anyway, I digress. Coming back, when I got to Arkansas, I worked at McDonald's doing several things. I worked at Pizza Hut, and as a matter of fact, even when I was working at the computer place in Virginia, I actually worked for Pizza Hut as well, as a driver and a cook and a waiter, and I've held just about every job at Pizza Hut that there was in those days. But one of the other cool things that I got to do when I was in college at Henderson State is where I went to college. But I was on the radio at the school, and then I also got a job at the local radio station in town. So I got to be a DJ for a good number of hours during the day and really into the evenings. In those days, the radio station would shut down at 11 o'clock at night. And so I was the night guy. And so I would come in about 6 o'clock, and we did not have any kind of computer at all. We played records and CDs, and it was awesome. I mean, it really was so cool, and had to record everything to what we called carts, which kind of look like 8-track tapes, which I know is getting lost on a lot of you, but Google it, you'll see what it is. But anyhow, cutting commercials, and it was just so much fun. I absolutely loved the radio gig. I loved being on the radio. I loved anything to do with the radio. In fact, when I went to college, ultimately, at first I started at computer science, but ultimately I decided that I wanted to own small radio stations. Now, unfortunately, what happened is about the time I graduated is when a lot of the radio station consolidation was happening, and terrestrial radio was certainly at the beginning of frankly, the end. I mean, in those days when I graduated, that's when digital music was starting to come on the scene. That's when you had things like Napster and BearShare and LimeWire, all that kind of stuff. And so those of us that could kind of see the writing on the wall could see that terrestrial-based radio was going to be struggling for a while. Didn't quite happen as quickly as I thought it was, but still, as technology changed, you name it, things happen. And so ultimately, I ended up not in radio. And so after my wife and I got married and we moved around a little bit, I had a hard time with my college degree. I had a hard time finding any job, which that was awesome. That was the whole purpose of going to college, because, once you get that degree, you can get yourself a job. Well, I had a hard time finding one. So I did a lot of temp work. And as a matter of fact, and sorry, my brain is kind of all over the place. Oh, I'm going to see what do we got here? Oh, there we go. Yeah. Glenwood Springs, Aspen. So obviously I missed Vail while I was talking. You may or may not have seen the sign for Vail, but cruising up here to Aspen, that's awesome. I would love to know if during the day in the game, if they actually have aspen trees that the town is named after, and B, if the aspen trees are set to be that golden and orange beautiful color that they turn. I'll tell you want to Google something, that's what you Google aspens in the fall. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely gorgeous, man. It's so cool. But man, that was awesome. But yeah, so some of the other jobs that I've had, and I'm not going to be in order anymore because my brain's all over the place, but for a while there, I actually worked for the Virginia Whiskey Company, and I worked on the line, and what I did was all the bottles would come in a single file along a top rail, and the boxes that they go into would come along a bottom rail underneath. And so my job was, when a box came, I would have to pop open the box and put in the insert so that it would divide the box into 9 sections, right, like a tic-tac-toe board. And then the bottles would arrange themselves in a 3x3 and drop down into the box. So you have a bunch of single file bottles cruising down this line, and they jam themselves into a 3x3 grid. As you can imagine, many bottles were shattered in that process. I don't know if they ever came up with a better way to do it, but I can tell you from working there, that was awful. I would come out completely drenched and soaked in, Virginia whiskey. And of course, they'd have a police officer stationed across from the factory, and he would just randomly, blip his lights, and then, he'd give you a sobriety test, because, these are people at the whiskey factory. So there's a chance, I guess, you could grab somebody who was, taking a little sips from the company pool, I guess. I don't know. Excuse me. But anyhow, so and the kicker is, if I ever got pulled over, yes, I would smell to high heaven like whiskey, because it was poured all over me. And so, they open, roll down your window, and of course you smell it, and you got to get out, and you got to do the test, and blah blah blah, and it's just holy cow! It's so funny to think back on that kind of stuff, man. But by the same token, any jobs that you get, anything you do in your life, well, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's an intern kind of thing, or if it's some menial job, everything you do will eventually become a part of who you are and what you remember, and what you enjoy / don't enjoy, all that kind of stuff. So it was just became part of me, I guess. So after let me jump ahead. After I had graduated and I was having a hard time finding work, I did some temp work, and I landed a job at the local ABC station. And that was fantastic. I got a job at the time when there was a lot of turmoil between satellite companies and the local broadcast stations. And so my job was to man the phone and answer questions about, why were the cable and satellite companies dumping local TV and what could be done about it. And, there were people on both sides of the conversation. So, of course, I was presenting the TV station side of things. And then once that kind of passed and calmed down, about that time, NYPD Blue had just come on. And if you're not familiar, it's a cop show. Honestly, it ran for a long time, I believe. I didn't see anything majorly special about it. However, they had a character on the show that they showed him from the back, naked, the whole body. So you saw his rear end on TV in prime time, and people went a little crazy over that. And so my job shifted to fielding calls and trying to calm people down who were kind of freaking out about what they were seeing on their primetime big three TV channel. So that lasted for a while. Had a good time with that. One of my favorite memories of that actually was I was working there during during Thanksgiving, and those days, I don't know if they still do it or not, but in those days they ran the Andy Griffith Show all day long. And so the program manager for the TV station said, hey, we do an Andy Griffith marathon all Thanksgiving Day. Why don't you put together the episodes and we'll run them in whatever order you want. You pick the ones. And I got to tell you, that was so cool. It was so much fun to go through. Oh, here we are, Grand Junction. Wow, we're heading in. But it was so cool and so much fun to go through all of the episode lists. And one of the things that I had asked for, I said, well, do you keep a record of these? Can I see which ones you've run over the last, couple of years? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. We've got the logs. So he pulls the logs. And so I went through and picked out several of the episodes that had run over the last couple of years. They were kind of fan favorites. They were ones that I had enjoyed when I was a kid, watching. I'm pretty sure I watched reruns when I was a kid. But anyway, so, but then I also got to pick other episodes that they hadn't run before. And it was so much fun, so much fun. So I left that job after that temp situation kind of ended there. Ended up temping for a residential youth treatment place, and I worked as their HR clerk. And this ultimately, they had a small network there. And if you're not technical, don't worry about what I'm about to say. But they were running a token ring network, and several of their employees who were kind of the big wigs, if you will, in the company were having some issues. And it turned out that's because the way Token Ring worked, their computers were not necessarily on the network at the optimal places in the Token Ring. And so I just asked if I could mess around and see if I could help fix it. And they let me. And then that led to a job at a local university where I was a tech guy and learned my networking skills, cut my teeth on that, which that ultimately led to being the technology director for an education service center, where actually my wife was an early childhood teacher. And so I got that job and then ultimately moved to doing a similar role at another education agency. And that's kind of where my official career went. And then kind of not unofficially, but kind of my side gig back about 5 or 6 years ago at the time I'm recording this. One of the other technology coordinators for a school district and I were sitting around talking at lunch. And we talked about how we had both been in radio and how fun it would be. And so we decided to start a podcast, and that's where the EduTech guys came from, born over a lunch conversation. And we've been doing that Matter of fact, that's kind of grown into a media company that we just launched, Amalgamated Toast LLC, that officially launched the same day I'm recording this. So pretty excited about that. We're not sure where that's going to go, but, you know, hey, we'll give it a shot, see what happens. So anyhow, so there you go. That is Dave's career in a nutshell. In the meantime, I'm not having such a good time being able to get through here. Excuse me again. Okay. I'm going to try to park the truck. I only have to pull it theoretically straight ahead here. Now, I am going to have to kind of wing myself around so that I can get this beast pulled in. I love the cop sitting at the end there. He's like, come on, dude. Just all you got to do is pull it in, man. Just let's go. All right. So let's see. Got to put it between the lines. Here we go. All right. We got the front end aligned. It looks like we got the back end aligned. All right. We should be good to go right here. No. What? Why is it? Oh, I'm over the line. Ah, man. This is one of those things that drives me crazy about this game. You have to be like exactly between those lines. Now, I don't know, especially if you're parking like out in the middle like this. I don't know if in real life that matters that much if you're off 2 inches. Maybe it does. I don't know. But, you know, come on. Just give it to me, man. All right. Is this going to give it to me? No. What? Oh, my back end's a little off. All right. You know what? Never mind. I'm just going to press enter. I don't care. It doesn't matter. We'll take it. It's a win. Awesome. We'll do it. All right. So there you go. Taking the ride from Denver all the way. Oh, where am I going here? Come on. All the way out to Grand Junction. Having a little bit of fun. Let's see. Now, my truck is in a little rough shape. So, I'm just going to head across town to, well, whoops. Let me check to see real quick. I'm pretty sure there's got to be a repair station. Anyhow, I'll tell you what. I'm pretty sleepy according to the gauges there. My gas seems to be okay, so I'm going to get some rest, get my truck fixed, call it all good. Got any questions, problems, suggestions, horror stories? Feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. Special thanks to Hero of God, GamerGull, LosWilko, Connie C, Zachary, and 7220 Gamer. I'll get you eventually. 7220 Gamer. Thank all of you so much for supporting me on Patreon and through channel memberships. It means a whole lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this was entertaining, learning a little bit about my just the different jobs I've had and the weirdness that makes up davidinark. So there you go. Oh my gosh. I am davidinark. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.